So welcome everyone to the JB Media Digital Drop-In. I'm so excited to have you all here today to talk about a subject that I know is a very relevant subject these days, especially for those of you who work in the nonprofit world, and is also a complex and rich topic simply because it involves Google Ads, which I think is a fantastic advertising system, but also, as many of you may already know, takes a lot to learn. And especially Google Grants itself as an opportunity is kind of its own world where you really have to dig in and learn a lot, not just about how Google Ads works, but about how the grants themselves work. So I'm really excited today to have Justin joining us because I know his team at JB Media Group has had great success with Google Grants over the years and has really some strong expertise around really making Google Grants, maximizing the potential of this opportunity for different organizations. Also, as most of you know, this year, we are going to be running classes alongside of each one of our webinars. So today, if this class gets you excited and you are interested in really digging in more to this topic, we're going to have a class on April 27th from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern. It's a virtual class. You do have a special early bird price, which you can see that'll run through April 15th. And so Peter Friesa will be joining me. He's one of the Google Grants experts from JB Media Group. So again, I'll share this again at the end and share the link as well. But if you're interested, put April 27th from 3 to 5 p.m. on your calendar. I also see here a message from Shelby. You were saying your audio is extremely pixelated. I'm not sure exactly what you mean, if you mean the video is pixelated or if the audio is going in and out. It may be your Wi-Fi connection. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm not exactly sure what you can do, except you could try leaving and rejoining to see if that adjusts the issue. As far as audio is concerned, again, if there's something chopping up the audio, if anybody else is having that issue, feel free to chat in and let me know. But right now, I think it's just you, Shelby, so I'm so sorry. The last thing I wanted to say, though, is that we are recording this, and I will be sending out the recording in the next couple of days along with the slide deck. So you will be able to go back over this information. And for those of you who work at nonprofits, I really want to encourage you to feel free to share this webinar recording with anybody that you think could potentially utilize it. So again, as we're sharing information today, if there's other people on your team and your staff, if there's other nonprofits that you know that could really benefit from this conversation, then please feel free to share this recording with them and share the slide deck after the fact. So as usual, as we go along, you should have the Q&A feature that you can enter your questions into. We welcome all questions during the webinar. So we will have some time at the end, but if you want to jump in and ask questions as we go along, please don't hesitate. I'll also be watching the chat. So if you have questions there, feel free to share them as well. But if you put them in the Q&A, it is a little easier for us to see that. And for those of you who just joined, just a quick reminder, there is a poll running right now, just asking who is using Google Grants and who is not. So in the next few minutes, I will end that, but I would love for everybody to answer that and let us know while we go along. So for those of you who are newer to Google Grants and maybe aren't familiar with how it works, getting a Google Grant is essentially a way to get advertising dollars available to you as a nonprofit, as a 501c3. So essentially, what they're doing is giving you free advertising to a certain extent. They're giving you a cap at about $10,000 a month. And there are some exceptions to the rules here. And so you can see on the screens, things like hospitals, government entities, universities. There's going to be some eligibility requirements you may not be able to meet. And then there's often a really important component of having a successful Google Grant for advertising, and that is having a great website. So it isn't ideal if your website has really not invested in your website to think about trying to get a Google grant, because it's going to be so important for your website to work in tandem with your ad campaigns. But essentially, this is Google giving nonprofits that they feel, deserve the chance to really promote themselves through Google Ads, a very large amount of money to play with on a monthly basis. I also will say there is an application process. So again, when you download these slides, if you click on this link, it'll explain a little bit more detail around just what kind of information they need from your organization and what the process is for application and getting accepted. So what are the benefits of Google Grants? This really comes down to what are the benefits of doing Google Ads. And I think, in some ways it's pretty straightforward what we can do with ads in the sense of increasing traffic to our websites and just increasing brand awareness, organization awareness, name recognition, allowing people to just learn more about what your organization is doing, the programs you offer. So all of that obviously is built in. But I think where we see some of the magic in a Google grant is really understanding, again, if you have a great website and you're clear on what it is that you want to see when it comes to conversions or the actions that people are taking once they click your ads, this is where I think we can really start digging into what the real power of Google Grants is. And that is that whether it's phone calls, signups for a newsletter or something else, some type of programming, whether it's just completing forms that are generating leads for different things, whether it's selling tickets to events or literally just doing fundraising, and even just providing data around what it is that your organization does, your industry, your focus, all of those different things that equal what I would consider to be real engagement in your organization and in your website. That engagement is, I think, really what the biggest opportunities are with a Google grant, right? Brand recognition and name recognition are really important, but the next step that we want people to take is to really engage and take action. And so I think the beauty of a Google grant is having that budget and then investing some time in real strategy to figure out how you get the word out about what you're doing, but then you get people to actually get involved in some way. And there's also, I think, a lot of great reporting involved in the Google Ads system. So you get to see a lot of information about how your ads are doing, really understanding what keywords, what types of audiences, what types of verbiage are all really producing the top results, right? So over time, one of the things I think all professionals do with the ad systems is, to me, there's a bit of a listening exercise, right? And paying attention to what happens with your ads, because as your campaigns run, you start to learn what people are really attracted to, what's really getting them to take those actions, right? And take that next step. So to me, like I said, huge opportunity involved in this world to grow your organization on a lot of different levels. So not to just get the name out there and get information out there, but actually get, like I said, those conversions at the end. So when it comes to Google Grants, just to sort of break down in a little more detail how it works, I love this graphic that Google actually created that just kind of shows you exactly how the steps kind of work, right? You're basically going to go through that eligibility process, make an application, you're going to enroll in the Google Ad Grant, then you're going to create your Google Ads account, or I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Justin, if they have a Google Ad account, they should be able to connect them already. And then
I believe so. I'm not 100% sure how it works these days. It's been a few years since I actually walked a nonprofit through the process, but most nonprofits don't have Google ad accounts that they were paying for. A small percentage do. In converting one, I think you just have to make sure that the settings align with what is allowed with the Google grant, and then apply for it to be converted to a grant account once you've been accepted into the Google for Nonprofits program.
Excellent. Yeah. And like Justin said, that final step is really once you get everything set up, you need to submit it for review. And then they kind of approve you to start moving forward. So the reason I wanted to outline this is just because it's not the same as being able to jump in and just like start it up, right? You're going to have this sort of window where you're doing all this setup, you're checking in to make sure the application's accepted, getting everything all correct, and then you're going to launch your campaign. So I feel like you want a month or two to really have some space before you know that your campaigns are going to be able to kick off. There's also a few guidelines I think everybody needs to be aware of. One is that your ads are going to be text-based. So far, they're not allowing you to run video ads and display ads and things like that. It's really focused on the text ads, where in some ways, to me, it makes it a little simpler, right? As far as creating the creative graphics and things that you need, you don't really need to worry about that step. What you're really worrying about is the text in the ads and then how great your website is and what pages you're linking them to. They'll also appear only on the Google search results pages. So if you are running and paying for Google ads, there may be other places that your ads would be showing up, but your Google Grant ads are going to show mainly on those Google search results when people are looking for things. And then most importantly, you really need your account to stay in good working order. And so this is something that over time I've really seen, if someone on your staff is going to handle your Google Grant, they're really going to need time dedicated to this, because I feel like it's important to make sure on a regular basis that the actual Google ad account that's attached to your grant is really meeting all of their criteria, that your campaigns are living up to the expectations that they've placed on you. And if you don't have somebody who can focus in on this, then I think you really need a third-party team to come in and be responsible for this. Eventually down the road, I think it takes them less and less time as they get better and better at managing the grant. But I do think you really need somebody with a focus on this to make sure that you're not going to fall into an area where your Google Grant basically gets suspended because you're kind of not meeting their ad criteria. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But that's just, I think, an important thing. If you're going to embark on this journey and you haven't started already, then it's going to be important to have someone where this is sort of their responsibility.
I want to add a couple of quick things, mostly about the application. So a lot of times when nonprofits hear applying for a grant, they think of the traditional kind of grants that require like a huge amount of effort and creating a lot of information to apply. That's not the case for the Google Ad Grant. It's mostly just a one-page application and the most complicated part of it is where you actually just enter your mission statement and how you plan to use the grant, which is you just basically say why you want more website traffic and how it aligns with your mission of your organization. That can be just usually a couple hundred words total. We kind of have a template for that. But you also have to enter your EIN number, and they've added a step recently where you have to verify with a third party that you're a 501c3 nonprofit if you're a US-based organization, and there's different steps for other international nonprofits, but you basically have to certify that you are eligible through the basic eligibility and basically fill out a one-page application for the most part for the actual first step. Setting up the account within their guidelines is a different thing, but that's not a grant application. That's more of an account setup step.
No, thanks for explaining that, Justin, because I do think that's an important point to make, that it's not like grant writing, which if you're familiar with that process, which I've done a little bit of that, it can be very, very time consuming. So with Google Grants setup, there are a few highlights that over the years I've talked to Peter about, especially when we're sharing this type of information with people. And this is just a quick list that I think is important. Again, you can click on this link when you get the slides to dig into the entire sort of compliance guide that they give you. But like I said, they have some requirements for how you have to maintain your ad campaigns when you're using a grant. And so you have to have at least 2 ad groups per campaign. So you need to be running at least one campaign with 2 ad groups. And then those ad groups have to have 2 unique ads. So this might be something, especially if you're not familiar with Google Ads, there's sort of these tiers, right? I build a campaign Inside of that campaign, I can have multiple ad groups. Inside of each group, I can have multiple ads. And truthfully, when it comes to advertising in this way, that's a really important thing to do when you're running your ad campaigns, in my opinion, is to diversify the number of ads that you have in your system and to really utilize the ad groups and the different ads. So a lot of times I see people, just for lack of time, they go in and they're creating maybe one campaign with one ad, and that's it. And so Google Grants is going to encourage you to explore this. And the truth is, it's a good thing because you want to learn how you include multiple ad groups and multiple ads in order to really learn more when you're running a campaign and connect with more people, give them more options in the system to attract folks. You're also going to need your keywords to get a quality score of 3 or higher, which I think is really important and is something where I've seen personally in the past, some of the nonprofits I've worked with sort of get their ad campaign suspended because their quality scores started dropping down a little bit. And Justin, do you want to talk a little bit about this? I'd love to get your just opinion on it, because I think this is a key thing that people don't fully understand what the quality score means.
Yeah, I'm absolutely happy to help explain that. And it goes back to your comment on the first slide about quality of the website. So the way that the Google quality score works is it tries to determine how relevant your website is for the keyword you're trying to show up for. So the way that Google Ads works is you put in the keywords you want your ad to show up for, and you put in the page you want people to go to when they click on the ad. So Google uses its AI, which is similar to what they use to figure out what should rank organically, to determine is this ad relevant for the word you're trying to target. So for example, if you are trying to run an ad about, let's say, affordable housing, and your keywords are like funding for affordable housing or affordable housing in my community or whatever, and it goes to a website that doesn't have those words on it, the quality score is going to be a 0 or a 1. If it goes to a site with where that content is, those words appear like just in the footer at the bottom, just like stuff them in, it's going to be a quality score of 2 or 3. If you have a page called affordable housing funding, and it's like got sections that say that, like, every other paragraph has it in there, it's going to be a quality score of 8 or 9 or 10. And the higher quality score also impacts kind of the algorithm where your ad shows up a little bit as well. So getting a higher quality score will give your ads better placement, and also make sure you don't run afoul of this important rule, which is, as Sarah said, is the #1 rule that causes accounts to be suspended. And the thing that makes it why you need a quality website is you can't talk about all your topics on one page. So as you create different campaigns and ad groups, you need separate articles and pages for each campaign and each ad group that are about the topic that ad's about. So therefore, some of our best case studies are large websites that have lots of old content, and we can build an ad group around each of their top articles or pages and drive traffic to that. And that allows you to get enough keywords into the campaign to use up the full budget, potentially, if those are competitive and highly searched topics.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, because that's where, like we said earlier, that website piece is so important, and also really understanding that different ads might target different areas of the website and different content. And so I think that's just something, again, for lack of time, sometimes people don't actually really plan that out in advance and kind of audit their own content and really take a look at what do we have, what do we want to push forward through our ads, and can we make sure the website has great content for that, but also that the pages are fast loading and that the calls to action are clear, things like that. Also, no single word or overly broad keywords. So this is something I think I harp on in most of our digital drop-ins, which is specificity is your best friend. So campaigning for specific things, for specific topics to, very targeted audiences, I think in general is always the best practice. And what I find over time is when I've run ad campaigns, if we're being very specific, and then in the first few weeks in, we feel like that's limiting the amount of people that we're driving, then we can sort of open things up a little bit, right? And broaden what we're doing in some ways. But I feel like that is easier than the opposite, right? Which is casting the net super broad and then trying to dial it back in. So I just always feel like reverse engineering that is the best, right? Starting with specifics and broadening out if you feel the need to do that. But typically we're going to see that really focusing in with intention and purpose behind what you're campaigning for is going to be important. Also, conversion tracking must be installed. And I think this is another thing, maybe Justin, if you have additional comments on, it's important that you have a great website, and especially maybe that you have somebody to work with on your website so that if you've never installed conversion tracking, you can do that, right? So whether you're fundraising, whether you're trying to generate leads, like I said, maybe we're trying to do free downloads or get people to register for an event or something of that nature, being able to really see the results between the grant itself and what actions it's producing on the website is really important. And I just feel like depending on whether or not, how your website is built, whether or not you're using third-party tools for different types of conversions, all of that type of stuff, I feel like it takes a little bit of thinking when it comes to that conversion piece. Again, is sort of preparation. And someone was asking, does it have to be the Google Ads conversion tracking, or can it also be analytics conversion tracking? Do you know the answer to that question, Justin?
I don't know the answer, but I think that I do. It would be a question for Peter. And I'm sure it'll be covered in the workshop we're doing on the 27th. But as far as conversion, I just want to note that we suggest trying to get as many different types of conversions into your account as possible, including a mix of like low effort conversions. They can be like engagement conversions or looking at certain content, or simple as free downloads or free programs, up through more involved, like paying for tickets or donating. Especially the donations are harder to get from first-time visitors. So you want to try to get people onto your list, engaging with your content so that they're more likely to donate or become a paying participant in your programming in the future. As far as, I think you can import conversions from Google Analytics, which is going to change next year when the rollout of GA4. Make it a little bit more difficult to set those up from Google Analytics, from my understanding. But I do think for some of the more advanced targeting options, you have to go with Google Ads conversions, which means installing Google Ads tracking code on your site, on the pages where the conversions happen, or on the thank you pages, to get real AdWords conversions to enable a few of the more advanced targeting options.
Yeah, and I'll just say that I agree with all of that. And I think there's two things to really consider that are important. One, you can connect Google Ads to Google Analytics. And that's where my question is, if they're already connected, right? If your Google Ads is already streaming into Google Analytics, I believe there may be a way to set the conversions correctly from that perspective in analytics. And also the biggest question is GA4, right? If you're not using Google Analytics 4 yet, that is the new system that they're going to be launching. We'll all be losing universal analytics as of next July. And so we're waiting to kind of see how all that plays out. I'm in the process of learning GA4 right now. So the other things that you're going to have to maintain over time is at least 2 site link extensions. And again, if you click on the policy guide, if you're really new and you're not really sure what these are, they're pretty straightforward and simple to set up. There are ways to add some additional links to the website in the ads. And they ask you to use at least 2 of those extensions. And there's a few different ones to choose from. You need to maintain a 5% click-through rate across your account. So I think this, again, is a big one with quality score, where I've seen people struggle, right, with that click-through rate. And then you're going to have to respond to a survey. But really quick, Justin, could you just talk about that 5% click-through rate? And just because I know you all have been able to maintain that. So
yeah, that is in some ways more challenging than the second bullet, the quality score, because quality score you can really address with the quality of your content. You have a complete control over the quality of your content. You don't have control over how many people click on your ad. So to get a 5% click-through rate, it means 1 out of every 20 people who see your ad actually click on it. And people who know how people interact with web pages, that's a relatively high percentage. And so where you can get your ads suspended is if some of your campaigns fall below that 5%. So the way to address that really is the quality of the written ad and how relevant it is for the word that they're searching. And that also gets into needing to have lots of ads set up if you're going after lots of keywords. But if your ad is too generic, then it won't be clicked on. People will just ignore it because it doesn't look like it's relevant to what they searched for. So that gets into needing a lot more ads on in your campaigns and your account to match, and also to use the newer dynamic types of ads. There are certain types of ads now where you can put in 15 or 20 different headlines, and Google will pick the one that's most relevant for the person's search. If you use that type of ad, they're going to more likely serve up a headline that's relevant to what the person searched for if you have a campaign that covers a variety of related topics.
Yeah, and that's where I think, the beauty, like I said, is having that $10,000 budget, because that allows you to really dig in and start to create, what Justin's talking about, diversifying your campaigns, diversifying your ad groups and your ads. So they have this minimum level here that you have to maintain, but certainly I think you're going to expand far beyond that in order to get yourself to that 5% click-through rate. So again, I know it's funny, we moved through this hour so fast when we're talking about a topic like this because it's so detailed, but I did put together some top tips for really winning with Google Grants. In addition to, like I said, that quick list of kind of what they're going to require from you. And like I said, a lot of these come from my conversations with Peter. And so these are things that we'll be digging into a little bit more in our class at the end of the month. But the first tip is really to look at how your Google Grants strategy with your ads and your search engine optimization efforts are working together. So if you've been doing SEO for your website, then you may have already done some keyword research. You also may have actually been able to see things like in your Google Search Console, or maybe some of your other SEO tools, where you've got some phrases and terminologies that are, doing really well for conversion, right? They're getting more clicks. We can see that they're sort of causing people to take more actions. And so a lot of times I'm going to be looking at any of that SEO data that I can as I prepare for the ad campaigns, because it does really inform me a little bit about what people are searching for, the behaviors. And then what I want to do is take that sort of organic SEO knowledge and utilize it to start making a strategy for Google Ads. And actually with Google Ads, you can do it in the reverse as well, right? If you've been running Google Ads and you start an SEO strategy, a lot of times there's great information that you can learn around what keyword phrases are working and not working. And then also looking at high dollar keyword terms and phrases that you want to target, or the phrases and topics that are really competitive. Sometimes I feel like organically, you may not be able to push through to page one on certain highly competitive things, especially if you're a smaller nonprofit, but you may be able to use your Google Grant to go after some of those targets because you've got such a larger budget to work with, which is going to give you more leverage. The second tip is build your campaigns with clear keyword structure and, really focus in, like I said, on being specific around who are you targeting, what is the message to them, what is the call to action and conversion you want them to make when they get on the website, and really just be thinking about, this is part of the customer journey thinking, right? So when they see the text ads, they're going to click, they're going to have an experience, making sure that it's just really clear topically what they're getting. I think we all know with advertising, when somebody clicks on an ad where they end up, the content on the website doesn't exactly reflect what they expected, then we have a problem, right? What's going to happen is we've got the click through, but we may or may not get that person to sign up or download or donate or whatever it is that we really want them to do. So really spending that time, I think, upfront before you kick off your campaigns is really important, right? To really start building out the structure of the campaigns with these sort of clear keyword topics in mind. And then really one thing that I have a pet peeve about is the Google Ads system will sometimes start to suggest keyword phrases and terms. And it's not that you can't use some of them, but a lot of times what happens is people who are newer to the system, they just start adding all the keyword phrases they can to a campaign. And what you end up with is like really kind of diluting the focus of the campaign. So be careful of those prompts from Google to just keep stacking keyword terms on top of keyword terms, right? In your ad groups. To me, we really want to do our own research and kind of create things. We might expand a little, but we want to be aware that if we start adding hundreds of keywords into something that are getting really diluted, then we're going to go back to having an issue with the quality score, right? And the focus, and also the user expectation may become muddy as well, which will affect our conversion rates. And so building one ad group for each keyword topic, I think, is a great sort of just rule of thumb to follow. And to be really intentional about your keyword choices, instead of letting Google offer you these little plus signs where you just keep adding tons and tons of stuff. Again, I like to start really specific and expand slowly over time, because if we start by adding in too many different keyword topics, it's going to be hard to dial it back later and remove those things. That process, to me at least, is a little more confusing. Tip 3, like I said, we talked about the customer journey. This is where I think you want to really kind of, again, have this brainstorm in the beginning, have this work up front before you're actually building things out in your grant account, and really thinking about who are you targeting? What is it that you're bringing to the table for them? What kind of devices are they working on? Are there specific locations that you're targeting as far as, geographics? Are there people with specific problems to solve, specific needs that they have that they need met? How can you really make sure that what you're putting into your advertising campaigns are going to speak to those things? Again, relevancy is the #1 thing across all of our channels that matters. So making sure that the ads that people see are relevant to them and what they're looking for, that's one of Google's prime objectives with their system. And then making sure when they click on that ad, what they get on your website is super relevant, like I said, to their needs, their desires, their questions, their problems. And so inside of the Google Ads account that you'll be using, you really do have a few different ways that you can take an ad group, take a campaign even, and really target it. So like I said, whether it's geo-targeting, whether it's focusing on people that would be using their mobile devices primarily, making sure that you tap into the responsive search ads, which are going to work well across every device. But I think those decisions that you make about your actual setup have a lot to do with you understanding your own objectives and being clear on how you're going to define success in a lot of ways, right? So again, this can be simple things like I've worked with organizations that want to target a younger audience. And we know if we work with that younger audience that we might want to create some ads that are really mobile focused, right? And get sort of that younger demographic activated on their phone around what our organization does. So it's really just kind of, like I said, maybe meeting with your team, even meeting with your board sometimes, and getting clear with, if we have this great opportunity with this much money, how are we really going to define success in the end for ourselves? And then building out your account to support that in a lot of ways. So one of the things that you'd see if you were in your Google Ads account when you first create a campaign is things like, what's the objective? So this is why you want to have this conversation ahead of time, right? So a lot of organizations, of course, are focused on website traffic, but really understanding if you have a physical location you want to get people to, that you can do that. If you're just trying to get your name recognition up, there's going to be types of ads that satisfy that in the system. And so this is where, Google Ads has evolved to be a little similar to social media advertising, right? And in addition to the objectives that you choose, you have this sort of audience segmentation that you can build in the system. And so again, getting clear with who you want to target is really, really important in the beginning, because each one of us, regardless of what we do as an organization, you probably have different niche groups or segments of your larger audience that you would have different ways of pitching, right? Whatever it is that you want them to do. There'd be different language you might use, different phrases that those types of segments or niches are searching for. And so really, like I said, plotting some of this out. This is where I think, Justin's team does a great job because of their experience in content marketing. Because in content marketing, we have to think about this stuff all the time, right? This isn't just an ad exercise, it's an organic exercise as well. So if you're doing organic work and you've done some of your audience personas and done sort of work around your brand in that way, that might be helpful to revisit that information as you're thinking about the opportunity for your grant. And then, of course, geo-targeting. Lots of different organizations have different states, different cities, different regions of the country that they want to target. Some nonprofits are global, and so they have a lot of different areas they want to target. So this is going to allow you to really think about that and how you attract people from different regions into your website and into the content that you have there. And again, you'll see one thing Justin mentioned was dynamic ads. There's lots of new things coming out inside of Google Ads regularly. And you'll see here with responsive search ads, you can enter multiple headlines and descriptions, and Google combines them into ads and then kind of sees how they work, right? So you can actually give the system a bunch of options to sort of play with. And this, again, is something that, we also see in systems like Facebook and Instagram Ads Manager. So really taking the time. I always tell people, don't rush this process. And one of my favorite sort of tips is I've taken a great class with Marie Forleo. And one of the things she talks about is writing headlines, right? Subject lines, blog titles, ad content. And she always says, once you've got a campaign idea in mind, put on a timer for 15 minutes and write as many headlines as you can in that 15 minutes. Instead of, taking an hour to do it, try to force yourself into a really good brainstorming space. To me, what happens is we get a lot greater options when we don't overthink it sometimes, right? Especially when we're trying to be short. So just saying rewrite, similar thing over and over and over for 15 minutes or so. Just try to get it as short as possible, as like punchy as possible, the thing that you think is really going to hook people. A lot of times you'll get some really strong ones out of that exercise. So encourage yourself, like I said, not to get stuck on the headline piece, because once you come up with a bunch of options, Google really is, their system's going to allow you to figure out what works the best. And then, of course, you've got, like I said, not just the headlines, but the descriptions that go with them. So you've got sort of a very short piece and then a slightly longer piece. So you can see the examples of that there. And again, it's sort of a mix and match scenario that Google's going to play with these things when you enter them in. And then I just included some information on the site link extensions. So you can see that there's different things that you can add in, and one of the requirements is to have at least 2 of these. And so you really want to dig into setting those up. There's also other types of extensions, including getting people to call your phone number if that's what you want them to do. So your ads can promote the website. They can also promote some other actions as well. Tip number 4, build a clear negative keyword list. And I really appreciated this tip, like I said, coming from Peter a while back, but really understanding that if there are phrases that do not fit what you're offering, that you take the time to build that into your system, right? There's so many different ways to talk about things. Some things are synonymous, some things are variations on a topic. But the truth is, what we don't want to do is waste any of our energy on topics and phrases that are not 100% accurate for what we're offering. And so that could be a brand choice. I've worked with some brands where there's certain language they just don't like to use. I've worked with other brands where there's just certain language that is really not quite an accurate description of their program or their service or their event. And so we just go ahead and remove those, right? So that we're never targeting the ads for something that's just not really clearly what it is that we want to attract. And again, I know there's sometimes a push to be flexible like that and be like, well, if people like this, they might like what we have to offer. It's not exactly the same, but it's similar. I think there's something to talk about there when it comes to organic content, but to me, when it comes to ad content, where we're actually spending dollars, and like I said, people who are clicking on ads, in my mind, have even shorter attention spans than people that are just surfing the organic results. And so we really don't want to, muddy the waters. We want to be very clear about what it is that we're trying to do. And like I said, each month you want somebody who can really review the keyword performance and understand what's working and not working. Because going forward, again, you will learn what things are creating really the conversions that you need versus what things are attracting people, but then we're not getting, like I said, those clicks to sign up or to buy or to donate. We're not getting them to do the actual actions. And so over time, I feel like as your grant is running, you're able to really see what are those conversion keyword phrases and topics that are super valuable. And that can even inform how you create additional pages on your website. And then tip number 5 is take full advantage of bidding strategy options. So again, we've already talked about how important it is to think carefully about your goals and objectives and what you want to see. But a lot of the reason that some of that is going to be important is when it comes to your bidding strategy, I think based on what you're trying to accomplish, you're going to adjust your bidding strategy. And again, I'm going to have Peter share a lot with us about what he's learned in looking at different accounts and doing this. But Justin, do you want to talk a little bit about just the bidding strategy? And Google does make recommendations. When's a good time to just accept their recommendations? Are there times when to maybe question what they're suggesting?
Well, as far as bidding strategies, Google does push people towards optimizing for conversions, which is also what we recommend. It's also the most technical approach. It requires the most advanced setup. One thing to note is that for the first, 15 or so years that this program existed, there was this firm cap on what you could bid in the auction for any keywords. So you could not bid more than $2 per click, which basically created a scenario where if there was a keyword where the commercial value was more than $3 or $4 a click, the Google grant didn't help for that keyword at all because it was impossible for the ad to show up because it would be pushed down to the second or third page and people wouldn't even see it. But when they, a couple years ago, about 3 years ago or 4 years ago, they enabled ad accounts to switch to optimize for conversions and release that cap on the $2 per click. If you have Google AdWords conversions set up and tracking, and you're getting enough of them, you have to get a certain number. I think you have to get about 15 per month for that, for the learning AI to kick in and enable that option. So my data might be a little bit outdated. Peter can give you more up-to-date information in the workshop on the 27th, but definitely going forward conversions is my recommendation.
Yeah, and as you can see from the slide, that's exactly why I included this, right? So you can see where the bidding strategies are, and you can see there a lot of times the first thing is whatever Google's recommending for what you're doing, and that's true. And I just wanted to acknowledge, no problem, Steph. I popped that into the Q&A for you, but for all of you who are interested, I will say Justin's team does work on Google grants, and so you can definitely reach out to them at jvmediagroupllc.com if you'd like to, just to talk about what they're offering in that way.
Yeah, and I'll add that we have about 20 that we manage on an ongoing basis, but over the last 5 or 6 years, we've also had about 15 to 20 where we've done the strategy and setup and then managed it for somewhere between 2 and 6 months and then trained the client, the nonprofit, to take it over. It's definitely easier to maintain a well-optimized, efficient account than it is to get one to that point. So it can be a good use of funds to hire us just for anywhere between 3 and 6 months or more if you want more support. Once an account is really well optimized, the only time it needs to be changed is if your content strategy changes or if you publish a bunch of new content that needs to be added, which is, again, once it's sort of the templates there, is a lot easier than starting from scratch or getting it set up right in the first place.
Yeah. And so you can see here just the other options when you're going into the bidding strategy. When you're building your campaign, I just went ahead and highlighted what the explanations are for each one, right? So you can see conversions, conversion value, clicks. There's different ways that we define conversions in the system. And so this is just, I think, an important thing, especially if you already, I know we've got about 80% of you that are new to Google Grants, but at least 20% of you are using Google Grants at this time. And so this is something to really just pay attention to as you're moving forward. And then, of course, you can see here when you're doing some of your budgeting and bidding, sometimes they'll ask you maximizing clicks, conversions, conversion value. Again, there's a few different places in the system. And I actually just ran through Google Ads in preparation for this to make sure my screenshots were completely accurate at this point, although they can change at any time. But this is something, again, Peter and I will dig into more. I know for me, most of my campaigns that I've been running were focusing on that maximized conversions piece, because as Justin said, that's really the ideal for ads in a lot of ways, not just for Google Grants participants, but also people that are running ad campaigns in general. A lot of times we're really looking, like I said, for that action from the audience, getting them to actually do something on the website that takes them to that next level of being a lead or a customer. And so I know we're coming down to the wire in the last 5 minutes. If there's any questions, please feel free to jump in. I wanted to give Justin a few minutes just to talk about this case study that I know they did a while back with B Lab. And, could you just share in a few minutes kind of how you worked on this and, what some of the results were?
Sure, absolutely. So for those of you who don't know, B Lab is the nonprofit that developed and certifies B Corps, which JB Media is a B Corp. So we got certified in 2018, early in 2018, I believe. And after that, we were trying to work with them more closely, and we proposed actually a barter sponsorship for their annual conference, where we would do their Google grant in exchange for a $10,000 sponsorship for their event. They agreed, and we moved forward with that. And their account had been suspended and in a state of sort of suspended animation for a few years, where the person who'd been managing had left. No one even knew it existed internally, and it was paused. So we were able to get in there, clean it up, turn it back on, update it to the newest rules and their latest strategy, and it was very, very effective for them. They have maximized its use and received over 1,000 different conversions. This case study was done about a year ago, but the numbers are pretty impressive for what we were able to do for them with the newsletter signups, form submissions, impact assessments. Their primary service is the starting process of becoming certified, where business has to go through and fill out 160 different questions and get started. So getting people registered to start that process is one of their main ways they convert people into customers, because once you're certified, you have to pay an annual certification fee. That's where they get about half of the revenue. So we were able to get that going for them, and it's been super successful.
And I think this case study also brings home the importance of, like I said, having a really good website, right? And these guys were set up in some ways for their websites to do these types of activities. And so that's where I think if, your website is at a point where you don't have a way to really get people to take an action, that might be something you'd strategize first, right? Is how can you create these actions, these conversions on your website that are really meaningful, that are part of how you define success. And so for those of you who are asking a little bit more about JB Media Group and what they're doing, I just went ahead and shared their website in the chat so that you have that. And again, we've got a few minutes left, so I want to make sure that anybody puts questions in if they have them. Of course, as usual, when you get the recording and the slide deck, you'll get some information about our upcoming free webinar, as well as some information about our classes. And like I said, if you want to dig into this more and really work on your account, you have the early bird price for those of you who attended today's webinar. It goes through 4/15. Like I said, we'll be doing how to successfully manage Google Grants with Peter on April 27th from 3 to 5 p.m. And I'm just going to go ahead and share the Eventbrite in the chat in case you'd like to sign up today, because those tickets went on sale while we were having this conversation. And like I said, I'm really excited to have Peter joining us. I want to thank Justin so much for joining us today, but also for giving me access to his amazing team, because they have just been so insightful in sharing their expertise this year, which is exceptional. For those of you who didn't know, I had David Gwaltney join us for a YouTube class last month, which was really awesome. So I'm excited to have Peter here. So thanks to JB Media Group for always sharing their knowledge and their talent with us all. But I know we're right at the top of the hour. If you have to go, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. Like I said, in the next day or two, you'll get a copy of the recording and the slide deck. My email was also in the chat, so feel free to send me any questions. But I'll stay for a few extra minutes if there's any additional thoughts. But otherwise, have a great rest of your day.